Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone. This is the 11th episode of the Stranded live stream. We did two 1 week, so it's like the 10th week now, which is pretty crazy to think about. If you're watching, you might have watched before, and then you know that we have used a variety of different formats. Like fan interview, you nominate yourself and get an interview with a Strandberg artist. We've done a few Ola Explains. I started a new one last week, which is Meet the Maker, where I will interview someone that I admire, and we talk about stuff. And another thing that we've done is connected to the Spark community, so the official Strandberg user community, where we have offered up as rewards for the topic submissions that we do monthly now. Used to do every 2 weeks, where people that engage in the community, they participate in these topic challenges, they win something that we call Flint. And today, we have Johannes here, who has been very active in the community and accumulated enough Flint to redeem them for a lesson with a Strandberg artist, and in this case, Richard Henshall of Haken. Hey guys, you're live.
Hello, happy to be here.
I have to assume that everyone that's watching knows who you are, Rich, but tell us a few words just about yourself and what you're up to.
Okay, I'm Richard Henshall. I play in the band Haken. I play Strandberg guitars, but I also play keyboards as well. Yeah, just happy to be here and looking forward to the lesson. It's going to be good.
Yep, it'll be fun. And Johannes, welcome on to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, firstly. And so, yeah, my name is Johannes. I'm, as you said, quite active in the Spark group, and I try to commit anything to each topic that comes up, because I feel it sparks my creativity, as the name says. Mm-hmm. And yeah, throughout the time, I've learned a lot in different areas like video editing, also playing guitar. And yeah, so I'm not playing in a band. I do not play keyboards, but I do play some guitar, and I hope I won't mess up too bad today. So
it could be easy. It'll be fun.
And I understand, so loosely the topic will be around transitioning from 6-string to 8-string. Is that sort of the general framework for today's lesson?
Yeah, I reckon we can talk about that and then talk about some other ideas about taking the chords a bit further, maybe. But so Johannes mentioned that he has a new 8-string, and you've probably been playing 6-string, right, up until this point. So yeah, it'd be a perfect topic to talk about.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave you guys to it. And for those of you that are watching, the plan is we'll let these guys go at it for like 45 minutes. And then we'll come on again, the three of us, and we'll take your questions. So if you have any reflections on what's mentioned during the class, if you have questions of your own or something else that you want to contribute, just type it in the comments field, and we'll bring it up towards the end of the lesson, and you can also participate. But for now, enjoy.
Thanks.
Hey, so Johannes, how you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. Very good. By stroke of coincidence, we've actually crossed paths before, haven't we?
We did, yes.
We had some
5 years ago, I guess it is.
Yeah, like 4 or 5 years ago, we had some lessons together. So how you getting on the guitar? You enjoying it so far?
So I'm still practicing the stuff that you taught me 5 years ago.
Oh man, I hope it wasn't that hard. But Yeah, you mentioned that you've got a new 8-string guitar, and I actually vividly remember getting my first 8-string from Strandberg, and it was a big jump because I've been playing 7-string up until, well, like 6 years ago. I still play 7-string, but exclusively 6 and 7-string guitars is all I used up until that point. And I remember getting this new guitar maybe 2 days before a fairly big gig, and it probably wasn't the best idea I've ever had to use this guitar to play the show. So I had loads of moments where I was playing open power chords and just hitting the wrong chord. So it took me a while to adjust my brain to these 2 extra strings. So I guess that would be my first bit of advice. It would be to give it some time and just constantly play with your 8-string as much as possible. So if you're jamming over a backing track, use your 8-string. Even if you don't use those 2 strings, it's still going to be useful. And then if you're writing music, use your 8-string. And once again, even if you only use 6 strings, it's just good to practice with that, because you're really working on honing your technique and your hand position, also your dampening with your right hand. It all ultimately wants to be intuitive, but to get to that point, you just got to continually practice. So yeah, that'd be my first bit of advice. But there are obviously things you can do to make it work with that extra string, because it's quite low, obviously, because these are 2 lower strings to your standard 6-string guitar. So if you're playing like power chords quite low down, it's going to sound quite muddy, and it can get very cluttered, especially if you're in a band scenario and you've got a bass player and keyboards as well. It's good to create some space. So one thing I like to do quite a lot in Haken and my own stuff is play open voicings, and these work really well quite low down. So let me just show you an open voicing. You might have come across these before, but it's really simple. It's actually, that's a minor open triad. So it's, if we start on the E string for now, and we're playing on the 7th fret, and we're going to play the 7th fret on the E string, we're going to miss out the minor 3rd on the A string. We're going to miss that one out, and we're going to jump over to the D string and play the 5th fret. So there we've got 5th in the lower part there of our hand. And then we're going to play that minor 3rd up an octave, which gives us a really nice open sound. And typically, if I'm playing these open triads, I'll use my pick and these 2 fingers to play it. So I'll just play you an example of a song. Let me think of an idea. Yeah, that's from a song we just released actually in my band Haken. And that's using these open triads with a few extensions in there as well. You can add notes to these chords. Like there, that gives me a minor 11 sound. So they're really nice voicings to use. I love them because the top note is usually quite melodic. So the minor 3rd is usually what you're going to be playing, unless you're playing an interval. But in most cases, it's going to be a melodic sounding note. Also, it's very open sounding, which means it works very well in the lower register. So we can actually take this chord or this shape, and we can move it onto the B string. There, let me change my pickup to the bridge pickup. There, so all of those chords were on the low B string, and due to the open nature of the chord, it kind of rings out nicely. So let me just show you that chord progression I just played. There, so it's the same shape I showed you before, but it's on the 7th fret of the B string this time, which is an F sharp minor chord. I'm going to jump up to an inversion of this F sharp minor, which is on the 10th fret, then the 9th fret, and then the 11th fret. Same strings. Then we're going to keep that shape. We're going to move down and play it on the 5th fret. That's going to be an inversion of your C sharp minor. Then we're going to take the minor shape and we're going to play it on the 12th fret. So it's going to be a B minor open triad. So in that case, it's 12th fret, 9th fret, 12th fret.
This one?
That's right. That one needs to be the 9th fret.
Ah, yeah.
There we go. That's that minor voicing. Then this one's very nice because you're using that open string there. So we've got 3rd fret open, and then 4th fret, and that's like your major triad open voicing.
No. Which one? The first or second fret?
3rd fret open.
3rd.
And then 4th. There we go. That's an example of how you can take these open voicings and apply them to a lower register. These voicings actually got from playing the piano, because typically you'll play a 5th, or at least I did, on the piano in the left hand, and you can outline the melody in the right hand. So it's a very lyrical and melodic way of playing on the guitar. And you can, like I mentioned before, you can make extensions of these there. So that's something you can experiment with. So
you're making the extensions are on the high strings then?
Yes, actually let me show you one of these extensions. I'll show you the minor 11 one. Let's go back to the E string. And let's play the minor on the 7th fret of the E minor. If we're on the E string, we're going to play the 7th fret on the E string, miss out the A string, 4th fret on the D string, and then pinky is on the 7th fret of the G string.
Yeah. Okay. This one.
You've got to play the 4th fret instead of the 5th fret there. There we go. Now, this is a bit of a stretch. So what I want you to do is use your 2nd finger, which should be free by this point, and then play the 5th fret of that B string, which is a bit of a stretch at this point.
The 5th fret?
Yeah. It's a lovely chord though, if you can put it up. There we go. Yeah, that's particularly hard. It's
going to take some practice to get it done.
What you could do, if you find that too tricky, you could move up to the 12th fret. There, it works really nicely there as well. So that'd be an E minor 11.
No. No.
In this position, we're going to be playing 12, and then we're playing 9 on the D string, and then we're playing 12 on the G string, and then 10 over there, which is your A note.
No.
That's an 11. So that's just one example of how you can extend these voicings. And that's something I use all the time in my solo stuff and Haken as well. So yeah, so that's one thing you can do. Another thing I like to do is playing slash chords with these 2 low strings acting as pedal notes. So I'll show you an example. One of my favorite chords is this.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's a really open sounding chord. It's quite ambiguous because it's not really got a third in the chord. So there's no major third or minor third at this point. It's just a root, a 9, and then you've got your 5, and you've got your 7 as well. It's a really nice sounding chord. But let me just talk about the theory a bit, because essentially you're playing a major triad, but you're playing the 4th in the bass, which isn't actually part of the chord. So it gives you a slash chord, and in this case, it's F sharp slash B. Okay, so let me just show you how to play that. So I want you to put your pinky on the 9th fret of the D string. Have you got it on the D string there?
No, I do not.
Oh yeah,
this one. So I'm getting confused by those extra strings.
They just illustrated my point about adapting your brain to the 8 strings. It took me a while as well, to learn these notes and learn the string names, because if you're new to it, it's going to take you a while to adapt your brain to the extra strings. So yeah, so one string down, it's on the 9th fret, and then we're going to bar the 6th fret here, there. So these 4 strings are going to be barred, and then I want you to put your 2nd finger on the 7th fret, and play 4 strings. That's it. It's a real nice chord. But what you can do, you can move from that chord to this chord here, which is like your C position, F sharp major chord.
Yeah.
Real nice transition, because that first chord is giving you like a Lydian-y feel to a certain extent, not entirely, but to a certain extent, and then it resolves nicely to the F sharp. There's a slight amount of tension. It's a very minimal amount, but it is there. If you wanted to make more tension, what you could do is add in the minor 3rd here on that first chord. Then you get slightly more tension and release there. So that minor 3rd would be here.
So finger twisting again, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bit of an awkward one to pull off, but I'm trying to illustrate theory more than anything. You can kind of play these voicings in any position, really. But the theory behind it is that that 3rd is creating a minor major 7 still, which creates more tension and it resolves nicely. Anyway, so back to the topic in hand. This can be used in the context of these 2 lower strings, because we're going from B to F sharp in this case. So what we could do, we could take that chord there, the F sharp, and we could play it even lower down there, which is also an F sharp chord, but it's a bit lower. In that case, I'm playing it on the E string and the A string and the D string. And I'm just playing the 9th fret, the 9th fret, and the 8th fret. If I put the B, and then there I'm playing the B low note. There, I was just moving there. It really allows you to just jam out. So if you get a nice spacious, crunchy tone with a lot of reverb and delay, you can just sit there with these 2 pedal notes going underneath. So that's another application of these 2 strings. But it doesn't need to be played in a chordal way like that. That's a nice way of doing it if you're just jamming out, trying to meditate or something on the guitar. But you can also play it in a heavier fashion, using the same idea, where you're taking existing ideas that you already know on the 6th string and applying it to these 2 new strings. So let me get a heavier tone for you. On my song The Cocoon, from my solo album, I've got this section. It's like the main riff, I guess you'd say, from the title track, The Cocoon, where I'm playing these 2 chords. It's like a G major triad and an F sharp major triad, but over this B pedal note underneath. And that first chord, the G major over that B, is implying a kind of minor feel, because it's got that minor 3rd in there from the B. And then we also have that same chord that we just talked about, the F sharp over the B. But in this case, because of the minor feel, it's got a whole different feeling to it. So let me just play the riff. I think it's played in this point of the guitar. Let me just try it out. So there you can kind of hear it's a lot darker sounding than the last idea we just talked about. It's still based around that same idea. So let me just show you the way of playing that. Let's take a triad. You can play this anywhere really, but let's just take these triads here. So we're going to play a G triad, and it's going to be on the 5th fret of the D string. So fret 5. Are you on the 5th fret down there?
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, 5, 4, 3, which is outlining your G triad. Yeah, then we can just move it down a semitone.
So when the bass now is always the B.
Yeah, in this context, it's just a B pedal note, which is something I do quite a lot. You can move these chords around and create more tension. These two particularly have a lot of tension against that B, which I quite liked, especially for riffs. If you build up that tension and you can release it when you go to a verse or a chilled section after a riff or whatever it is. Yeah, so that's one way of playing it with these chords. Yeah, so you can take that idea and you can do any rhythm you want. That's a rhythm I chose in the song. It's got like a dotted feel to it. But you can also take the same idea, the same concept, and apply it to a single note riff, which I do a lot as well. And in this case, it does happen in the song. It's played like this. So like that, or you could make it more of a thrash riff if you wanted to. But it's all based around this same idea, just taking these triads, which are simple ideas that you already know from playing the 6th string, and just applying it to these 2 low strings, whilst creating enough space between the low pedal note and the open high triad to not make it too cluttered. That makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, yes.
Okay, cool. So that's that. Another thing I like to do in terms of making riffs is use a scale or a chord or a certain harmony just to outline the feeling of the song, or to almost set the scene for the song. One example of what I'm talking about is our song Falling Back to Earth. And the song, for the most part, is in melodic minor scale. So it has this kind of ambiguous, moody, brooding sound to it. And the opening section of the song is a riff. So I wanted to use that scale to set the scene and to give it a certain amount of context within the song. So in that case, the melodic minor, we're going to play it in C sharp. Once again, I'm using a pedal note in C sharp, and I'm just outlining these character tones in the scale, which for me, and for probably most people, are the major 7 working against that root, which is creating a certain amount of dissonance. And also we've got the minor 3rd, which is outlining the fact that it's a minor scale. So between the 2 of those and the pedal note, we have then at the end, I just ran up the notes of the melodic minor scale. So that's an example. Do you want to try and play it? So we've got the 1st finger on the 2nd fret of that low B string. And then we've got our 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the A string. That's your major 7. Yeah, so we're playing dotted notes. Like that, going back and forth between those 2 notes. That's it. And then we're playing this note here, which is your minor 3rd. Yeah, and we're doing the same thing. Actually, no, ignore me. That's wrong. It was there. So we're using the minor 3rd on just that last beat of the bar. And then the last part of the run is that, and it feels like a whole tone run, which is basically what it is if you didn't play the last note and the root note, because if you take the melodic minor scale or any of the modes from that melodic minor scale, there's actually 5 notes which have that whole tone feel. So it's like 1 note away from being a whole tone scale, which is another reason I love the sound of that scale. So yeah, anyway, that's an example of how you can set the scene and almost like dictate the mood of a song just by playing the riff. And you can apply that theory and idea to any scale, really. You could, like, if I wanted to make a Dorian sounding riff, I could play it in B, and I could take the root note, the B as the pedal note, the minor third, and then I could take this note here, the major sixth. Something like that, which is like a fairly basic riff, but it really outlines the Dorian feel because we've got the major six in there, which is your Dorian character tone. So that's another example. Another example might be the Lydian dominant scale, which is another scale I love. The character tones would be the flat 7, the major, in the key of F sharp, let's play it. The flat 7, major 3rd, sharp 11, you get this kind of feel. It's a pretty cool set of notes to play due to the symmetry of the way the chord is made up. But anyway, I'm just rushing through these ideas. These aren't actual riffs. These are just ideas based on this core idea of taking a scale, working out what are the key tones that give it the flavor and the sound, and then building a riff out of that sound, and then maybe using that to extend your song or to give it a bit of context. So does that make any sense?
It does, yes. I'm super glad that it is recorded and will be up on YouTube, so I can rewatch it as often as I want.
Cool. Yeah,
because it's so many information.
Yeah, flying through it. And I think just as a general point is to treat these 2 extra strings almost like a piano. Because I'm a pianist at heart, really. I started playing piano before guitar, picked up the guitar maybe 4 years after. And when I was playing the piano, I would use the lower register a lot more sparingly than the higher register. And when you're playing chords down there, try and create space. You don't want to clutter things. And just, using pedal notes is a good way of doing that. And just use those lower notes sparingly as much as possible. So, for example, in Haken, we will use the 8th string from time to time within a song, but we don't exclusively use these 2 low strings throughout a whole song. It's going to bombard the listener too much of one mood and color. Cool. So that pretty much covers how I approach those 2 lower strings, but I'm sure there's loads of other ways of doing it creatively. But I wanted to also talk about, I think we've got time, I want to talk about tapping. So this is something I love to do in Haken and my solo stuff and whatever, just jamming out as well. There's so much you can do with tapping. As I mentioned before, I started playing piano before guitar. So when I started playing guitar, I tried to transfer a lot of this information to the guitar because I was self-taught basically on the guitar. So I was just going with the flow really and just seeing what worked. And I remember writing this song for our album Aquarius. The song's called Eternal Rain, and it has this kind of clean tapping part at the beginning. I was trying to trying to create the feeling of cascading rain, and I wanted to create some ambiguous feeling in the harmony. So let me just talk about the notes first. So we're going to be playing in the left hand. We're just going to hold a chord. There's the chord. Let me just show you what it is. So it's the 9th fret of the D string, and then the 11th fret. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So that's the chord. Yep. And you're going to use that as like a foundation for this technique and idea, and you're going to be pulling off to this chord. So let me just talk about the notes. We've got a root note, then we've got a 5th, then we've got the flatted 7, and then we've got this 4th degree. gives the feeling of it's quite ambiguous, it's quite open, it's not really major or minor, which kind of fitted the concept at that point in the album and also the mood of the song generally. So the idea behind this technique is to use your fingers of your right hand to almost play it like a classical guitar and tap and pull off to these chordal tones. Here, let me show you what I mean. So there you can hear it creates this cascading sound, and it's a bit unorthodox, I guess, when it comes to tapping. So when I was writing with this, it was pushing me towards different kind of sounds and ideas, which I found really exciting. So let me just show you how to do that. I want you to rest your thumb on the, what fret is that? The 14th fret over here. And we're going to use that as like an anchor almost to keep your hand nice and steady. And we're going to assign these 4 fingers here. We're going to assign them to 4 frets, just like you would do typically if you're playing with your left hand. So the frets are going to be the 14th fret, 15th fret, 16th and 17th fret. And we're going to tap pinky on the 17th fret and we're going to pull off to that chordal tone. So, and then we're going to tap with your first finger on the 14th fret of the B string now. That's it. And then we're going to pull off on the 16th fret.
No. This one?
There we go. And then the last one is the 14th fret with the first finger. And we're constantly pulling off to this chordal shape underneath. And the actual technique is a very, very slight pull up. Like typically, if you're tapping, you're going to be doing downwards pull-offs. Traditionally, most people would do that. But with this technique, I found it was actually a little bit easier to do a very delicate pull-up, almost like a classical guitarist would. So do it very, very slowly. There, then you can gradually increase the speed. I feel that if you get to a reasonable speed, the technique needs to be very delicate and the pull-offs need to be very slight. That's pretty good.
No, this one. Okay, so
good. So the main
there's a lot of string noise coming around, but
yeah. See, this is why it's good to practice these things with an 8th string, because intuitively your hand's going to go into certain positions to try and mute these lower strings that are making unwanted noise. But anyway, back to what you were playing there. That was really good. So the technique is bang on. So, and the speed is good as well. You need to play very, very slowly. Try not to rush through these ideas. And over time, if you practice at a slow speed with the right technique, it will come together. And you've got to not rush through things. It's so important, especially when learning new techniques, because that's the point when you're really solidifying the technique. You're laying the foundations for everything that comes after. So yeah, it just does that.
Question regarding the thumb. Do you have it like resting right, like above the, like on the edge of the fretboard, or do you slip behind the?
I have it resting on the top of the fretboard, like that. And I try and keep. I don't know if you can see, but my thumb is fairly straight, so I try not to bend it like this. But like that. Then I just moved it up 1 fret in the song, which isn't diatonic, so it gives it a nice kind of modern edge to the sound. And the bass note, which I'm not playing here, but the bass guitarist Connor would live, is moving through the different notes of the chord in the left hand, which is creating a lot of movement with the section. So that's one idea. I want to show you this other one as well in the same song. This is a way of extending chords using both hands, almost like a pianist. So you've got one chord in the left hand on the piano, and you've got another chord in the right hand, which is giving you a more colourful sound, which is sometimes quite hard to do with just one hand in the left hand. I think also I must have been playing Final Fantasy VII or something at this point, because it's got this kind of weird, like add 9 cascading arpeggio, which is the kind of thing you'd hear in that game. But anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the theory and the idea behind this. Is we're going to play a standard minor chord in the left hand. It's like your A position minor chord in the key of G. And what we're going to do with the right hand is we're going to outline a major 7 in B flat over the top of it. So we're going to, just for this example, we're going to use these 2 fingers, and we're going to play 15th fret.
No, the first one is, yeah.
So think of this shape as you're tapping. Think of this shape. Remember that major 7, that B flat major 7 voicing, which is in this case 13th fret, 15th fret, 14th fret, and then 15th fret again. And then you've got 15th fret at the top there as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you're basically playing that on top of this minor chord. So if you had 2 guitarists, one guitarist could play that, the other one could play that, and together they create a richer, more colourful sound, which is actually a minor 9. So instead of it becoming a G minor or G minor 7, it's going to be a G minor 9. So it's a way of extending that chord by using 2 hands. So that's what we're doing. We're just outlining that.
This one.
That's it, perfect. Then what we're going to do now, we're going to move down chromatically, which is something I do all the time. Love the sound of that. And we're going to play a standard major chord this time, but in the key of F sharp. And then over the top of this one, we're going to be playing, once again, B flat, but a minor 7. So let me just show what I mean. Like that. So together we have this. Like that. It's quite a nice, almost like magical, kind of Final Fantasy-esque sounding arpeggio, which I really like to do, and it's played with a kind of clean tone. But let me just show you this voicing. It's a B flat minor 7. Have you come across that chord before? Almost. That's a nice chord though, but it's actually 13th fret, 15th fret. We've got a bar here, which is on the 13th, and then we've got 14th fret. So think of those notes, and now tap those notes over the top of this F sharp. Yeah.
Is this one right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. Got it down. So that's the idea behind this technique. So holding a chord in the left hand, and then outlining another chord in the right hand, and creating an arpeggio between the 2. And it works particularly well with these cascading ideas. And also the theory behind that is stacking. You can use this in any context, but stacking like a minor 7 or major 7 on top of another minor or major 7. So it works in this case like in the key of G. If we're playing a G minor 7, we've got the B flat major 7. That gives you a kind of G minor 9. And if we did it over here, there we've got this D minor 7 over the G, which gives us a 13 kind of sound. So these tools are pretty cool. If you're writing stuff and you've got a bass guitarist, the bass player could play at a root note and you could be playing chords that you're already familiar with, but just in different positions to extend the harmony.
So how do you usually write such riffs? So do you play like the first chord and the second chord and then think like, oh, they would be nice sounding all together, or?
Usually I'll probably have the bass guitarist playing the root note and then play the chord on top. Or in this case, because I've got 2 hands at my disposal, I'll just use both hands to outline it. Or you can also use it in a more kind of lead-based context. There, I just did a real slow demonstration of a minor 7 arpeggio, like a B minor 7 arpeggio, going into a D major 7 arpeggio. So between them, that creates a B minor 9 arpeggio. So you can use it in a lead context with arpeggios as well. And if you want to go even further, you could go another, play on the 5th, and you could get like a 13 sound, just like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, it's just another tool, I guess, at your disposal when it comes to writing or soloing or whatever you want to do. Right, so I think we've covered a bunch of stuff.
We did, yes.
Yeah, have you got any questions?
I think I have to wrap my head around it. And,
yeah, I mean, it's quite daunting, isn't it, jumping to the 8-string guitar? The hardest part I felt for me, well, I kind of mentioned before, adjusting my brain to playing for 8 strings. So one thing I always did was just try to think of it as a 6-string guitar and use these existing ideas, then just apply it to this new format of 2 extra strings. Another thing I really struggled with was the dampening of these 2 low strings. It's your hand is used to a certain way of playing with the 6 strings. So yeah. I think the real way of just mastering that is just constant playing, like I mentioned before, just trying to use it in every possible context. If you're playing like a function gig or something, and you're not even going to use these 2 low strings, just use your 8-string anyway, and it's going to force you to dampen these 2 strings. And over time, it will hopefully become intuitive. And the other thing, I guess, I didn't really mention before, is that if you're playing like standard chords, like a C or a D, usually with a 6-string, you're going to have your thumb over the top. Yeah. Which is quite a common way of playing, like Jimi Hendrix style chords. But when it comes to the 8-string, it's a bit trickier because the neck is obviously a lot wider. So you can probably do best by putting it at the back, like in the middle of the back. Or the endure neck profile on these guitars is very, very useful for the 8-string because it just rests very nicely like there, which is like the perfect spot. It's just a bit too far to loop it over and for it to feel comfortable. So I probably just have it there most of the time, unless I'm doing anything like really technical, and I will have it in the middle at the back. But yeah, I guess just play it as much as possible and get to the point where it's intuitive. That's the ultimate aim, I think.
So does it feel weird if you now pick up a 6-string? So like you...
It does, yeah.
The low note, but there is no string.
Yeah, it does. It does feel weird because I'm constantly using the 8-string for Haken. So I exclusively use it for every show that we play. We play a lot, and for every the lead up to a tour, I'll be practicing my 8-string. But in between the tours, as much as possible, I'll use the 6-string. I've got a Salen, I can't pronounce it properly, but I use that all the time. That's like my favorite guitar, and that's a 6-string. So I try and play that as much as possible in order to not forget how to play with a 6-string. But so I feel that once you've got it down, after you've played the 8 string for long enough, maybe a year or so, then you can go back, start using the 6 and the 7 string, and try and maybe create some kind of balance between all 3 guitars to make sure you've mastered it all. Cool. Well, I think kind of covers it. Are you still there, Ola?
I am.
Cool. Enjoy the lesson?
I am, definitely.
Nice.
So we actually on basically kind of what you've been talking about for the past couple of minutes. We have a question from Mark here. I'm a 6-string player, and I've been looking at purchasing my first 7-string. Hadn't really considered an 8-string, but having that extra range interests me. Is it a better idea to get a 7-string first, or should I just jump straight to an 8-string?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And I mean, when you and I met the first time, you played 7-string, so
Yeah.
you've made this journey.
So I'd been playing 7-string for a long time by that point. So I can't really give much advice of how it would feel from jumping from the 6 to the 8, even though I've done a whole lesson on it. So I used the 7-string for a long time. But I guess for Mark, it really depends on what he wants out of it. If he's writing music, for example, and he wants to go to those darker regions on the guitar, and he wants to get that heavy sound and those moody guitar parts, maybe jumping to the 8-string is going to be what he wants. I personally love the 8-string because it covers everything that I need. So I can still play my 6-string songs, which we do have in Haken, but I can also play the 8-string songs as well. And also, a few of our songs go down to, like I just played an F sharp, but it goes down to an E. So live, I will just use a pedal as well and have a pitch shifter on that low F sharp. So I've got it all covered. So I can pretty much play any song that we have in Haken with the 8-string. So it works perfectly for me. But I guess it really depends on what he wants from it and whether he's going to be more riff-based or, yeah, it really depends.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Johannes? You made the jump from 6 to 8. Do you think it would have been easier to go to a 7?
I have a 7-string as well,
Right.
a non-Strandberg 7-string, so normal neck. And the first thing I noticed with the 8-string was that it felt like more intuitive somewhat, because 6 strings is an even number and 8 also, and 7 is like that. It kind of draws me off. And so I think if you ever plan to use lower than the 7th string, there is no reason against buying an 8-string. I mean, it's not too much of an extra regarding the costs, and so it will be more expensive if you buy a 7-string and then find out that you need an 8-string.
Yeah,
I guess.
I was thinking to myself, Richard, when you were doing the tapping, do you find that the fan frets make a difference? Is it improving for 2-hand tapping, or is it? Do you have to adjust a lot to?
It's a really weird one. It kind of calls back to the other point I was making earlier with the 8-string. There's just constant practice and getting to that point where it's intuitive and you're not really necessarily thinking about it too much. So I feel that with this, it's the same, really. I'm just constantly practicing with the fan frets and then getting to that point where I don't even know anymore. So I can't really answer it truthfully. But there was, I can't remember this. I'm going to mess this up because I haven't played it in a while. But there's this run. That, which was terrible. But I haven't played it in a while. It's a run in our song, The Architect. It's like a tapping run, which goes from like a long way across the neck. And when I first got a fan fretted guitar, I kept on messing up that top note. Yeah. So, and it was live, so I was trying to hit it, but then I just had to adjust my way of thinking. And once again, it's just a constant practice. And eventually my muscles took over and they would just move to that position naturally. So now it just feels entirely natural to me to play it, but it's just a question of playing over and over certain things.
Yeah, I feel
All right,
like
we have another question from.
Looks more like it looks more frightening than it is. So I think once you pick up a guitar with fan frets, you get used to it pretty fast. So if anyone comes here and looks at the guitar and says, "Oh, it looks weird," and then I ask them to try it, then most of the time they will say, "Oh, it's not as weird as I thought it would be."
Yeah. Well, we have another question. It's from Nicholas. He says, I noticed in Haken there's sometimes sections built around diminished scales. These, being exotic and without a natural fifth, are quite difficult to deal with. Any tips to making riffs, chord progressions, melodies in these scales?
Yeah, I love this scale. It's very cool. It's great for so many reasons. You can use it like in a jazz context as well, which is traditionally where it probably would be heavily used. But in Haken, we use it in more of a riff-based context for most of the time. The reason it's cool, for the most part, is that you've got this tritone. You've also got the flatted 9. You've got the minor third as well, and also you've got this flat 7 as well. So I'll just play a quick riff. There, so that I'm using the tritone, the flatted 7 there. I could also use the flatted 7 if I wanted to, and the major third. So I would probably suggest trying to find those tones that really hit the spot for you as a writer, and then focus around them in the riff. So that scale for me really can be quite dark sounding. So I'll be trying to focus around the tritone, and then the minor third and the major third, and then the flatted 9. But there's also, we have a song called Cockroach King where we play more of a kind of quirky Mr. Bungalesque style section. But I wrote that whole part with the whole half diminished scale or half whole scale, depending on how you want to think of it. So you can make it quirky sounding as well, due to the tritones if you play them a certain way. So it's all down to how you play it, but then the note choice as well, I think.
Right. Well, Connor has sort of a related question. Who wrote the 8-string riff in the middle of Crystallized, the heavy one in the instrumental section?
Yeah, well, that was an idea that I had on my laptop years before, even before Aquarius. I had this weird kind of jazz section, and back in the day when I used to write songs, I used to use general MIDI sounds, so it sounded terrible. So I had these guitar tones with MIDI, really thin and nasally guitar sounds, but then all the drums are programmed with these really basic general MIDI sounds. So I think during that time I was going back through all these ideas I'd archived on my old computer that I hadn't touched in years. I just came across this one idea which sounded really out there and quite jazz infused. So yeah, that's where it came from that initial idea. And then we took it and we did the typical thing in Haken where we developed the idea and each add our own spice to it.
And speaking of tone, Alex is wondering, when it comes to dialing in the lead tone, what models in your do you lean towards in the live setting? So I think there's a couple of words missing there, but yeah. How do you dial in a good lead tone for live playing?
So I use, for the most part, live, the Axe 8, which is a really good amp simulator, and it's really built like a tank. I've had it for 5 years now and had no issues with it, and it's still going strong. And in terms of the amp I would use for my rhythm and my leads as well, I use the same amp setup. It would be the Friedman HBE, which is a really cool amp. It's like a mod of a Marshall amp. So it has that crunchy British sound, but they've modified it to have more high gain. So it's really good for the heavy stuff as well, but it's not overbearing and too high gainy. We actually use this to reamp all the heavy sounds on our latest album, Virus, at Nolly's studio. He has one right by his computer. So we ran all of our guitar tones through that, and we actually used it on the album as well. But in terms of the lead tones, maybe some delay on there, and just turn up the the mid up a bit, and the presence as well, to give a bit more clarity and presence in the sound.
All right, so venturing away from tone completely, Roberto is asking, Rich, how do you create space in heavier songs like Nil by Mouth and Prosthetic, especially with Charlie doing some big riffs as well?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one. I feel that there's, like we mentioned earlier in the lesson, creating like a nice divide between that pedal note and the higher triad that sits on top. That's a way of creating space. Also, trying not to over clutter the rhythmic side of things, just allowing there to be gaps in between beats and hits on the drums and the guitars. And one thing we do quite a lot is we'll play, let me just have yeah, so that was from our song In Memoriam. So Charlie at that point, it's in verse 2, is playing these kind of low chugs, which is, which would actually be an E, but I'm playing an F sharp, and I'd have my pitch shifter live. But so then on top of that, I'm playing these chords over the top. With a nice delay and long reverb tail, which is giving the section a more kind of ethereal and ambient feel. So that's another way you could create space in a otherwise heavy section.
So what's the like normal composition flow for Haken? How do you like collaborate, and what's the process of writing the various parts?
So back in the day, I used to do a lot of the writing. So I'd build these tracks, like I mentioned earlier, with these general MIDI files, and then send them to guys, and then we would jam through the ideas, and then just try and make them more musical and actual, like a band playing it rather than a computer. And then after around about Affinity, we started collaborating together, and we started writing everything as a band. So from Affinity onwards to Vector, and also Virus, a new album which we haven't released yet. So for those albums, we've been sharing ideas right from the beginning together, and we've been using an online space called Hightail, and we just bounce projects back and forth. So we have Logic, we all use Logic. One person might begin an idea and then display it to the guys and say, look, this is my idea, what do you reckon? Someone else might say, okay, I've got an idea how we can develop that. But then they'll take that project, and we'll just go back and forth until we've got something we're happy with. And we were lucky, actually, because we played a tour with Devin Townsend, and you came along, actually, to one of the shows, Ola. We were lucky because that whole tour was leading right up to the point we were going to record our newest album. And we used that time in the back of the bus. We created a makeshift studio, and we just finalized all of these arrangements and just tidied things up and recorded vocal ideas as we were together for a whole month. So that whole process was good fun.
I just had Pliny on with a fan interview a couple of episodes ago, and he was saying it just blew his mind how people could write on tour, because it's like, and I can completely relate to what he was saying, because for me to be creative, I need to be in a certain frame of mind, which doesn't come until I've had some like downtime or harmony in my mind.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that as well. I definitely feel like I come out with the best ideas for me when I'm at home.
Yeah.
And I've maybe decompressed a bit after a tour, or you know, you've been away from your instrument for a few days. You can come back, and then you've got all these fresh ideas, and you can look at certain songs or ideas in a new light. But in this case, we were lucky because we already had the arrangements. So most of the writing was done, and it was just a question of just tying up all of those loose ends and working on all the finer details, and mainly just getting vocal ideas down, which is it's a very important part of the song, but the core line share of the writing was already done by that point. So, but I agree, writing in that environment would be tricky. You have to write a whole album that way. Yeah, it'd be too hard.
All right, we're coming up on the hour, but let's do one last question here from Laksh. He says, that was very interesting to play the chords and melody as a piano. Can you highlight some more of it?
Yeah, so this is, I love it. I love these voicings, and this is, like I said before, coming from my piano background. So we have the fifth there, which would be like your left hand to the piano. Then we're moving, well, you can't even see my guitar, can you? Moving the third up to the top, which to me sounds very lyrical. And if I was writing a melody for vocals, I'd probably use that line as the vocal line, which is what we do actually in the song Initiate. There, so I just played a little part from one of our songs, Initiate. And that top part, the top note, well, that's too high for me to sing. That actually is the melody line that we use in the song. So it's a real fun way just to almost like meditate on your instrument, where you can just sit there and you can play through chords and also play through the melody like a vocalist is with you in the room at the same time.
Yeah, I know you're a self-taught guitarist, but did you have formal training on piano?
Yeah, so my mum's a piano teacher, so I was lucky to grow up with that. And from the age of 6 or so, I went down the classical route. Then I also played a bit of clarinet as well and drums. So I learned formally both of those instruments, not to any great level, but I feel that that helped me build a foundation of music theory and just a general understanding of music. Then when it came to guitar, I'm quite happy with the fact that I self-taught myself, because maybe it helped me think a little bit outside the box and come out with certain ideas and ways of playing which aren't necessarily that typical. But obviously you're going to fall. Everything's been done anyway, so it's hard to be entirely original these days. But I'm doing my best.
Johannes, do you play any other instruments?
Not really. So, you know, if I have to, I know how to play some bass, but it's very similar to guitar, so I would not. Yeah.
But you have a lot of many different other creative outlets, at least.
I do, yes. I love like photography and video editing and like all the stuff, the sound design. I think if you watch all my Spark entries, they all are very different.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, the last one I did, or one of the last ones, was to develop a delay plugin, which is showing distance instead of milliseconds as a setup time. So it's a different approach.
Yeah.
And
wow, that's cool.
That was really cool. Yeah. So you basically drag a slider from
you can
is it
move
like
it to Mount Everest and then sit there and wait for a minute to get the sound come back in.
That's cool.
Yeah,
well,
it plugs in. It plugs into your DAW, so you can you can download it.
Actually, in Logic, it works quite well.
That's so cool. That's my main issue. That I'm so obsessed with music that I sometimes don't have time to focus on other things. So it's good to be well-rounded and do lots of other things. It seems like you're on the right track.
Yeah. So to those of you that are watching, if you're not a member already of the official Strandberg community, Spark, look it up on Facebook. Join the group there. It's full of non-guitar people because it is about creativity. Obviously, a lot of guitar people as well, but a lot of the challenges that or topics that we bring up are not specifically music related or guitar related at all. We have a lot of creative challenges that you can meet in a lot of different ways. But for now, I think the time slot is up. I've enjoyed it very much. I hope you guys have too. And
Yes.
one absolutely last super quick question. Roberto is saying, Rich, any updates on the Nova Collective album? I love the first record.
Oh, firstly, thank you so much. Yeah, me and Dan from Between the Buried and Me, we're very busy. I've got Haken, he's got Between the Buried and Me, but we have been talking about it, and we got about halfway through writing an album, but then we just didn't have enough time to give it what it needed to be put into what it needs to be. But we're going to hopefully do it maybe by the end of this year, maybe release it next year, but who knows? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's wrap up there. And thanks to everyone that's been watching. An archive of this entire stream is going up on our YouTube channel. It stays on the Facebook page as well. But like Johannes, you can revisit it as many times as you like and pick up the tips and tricks he learned from Rich today. But take care, everyone, and hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.